Saxophonist, multi-instrumentalist, and composer Nick Biello is earning acclaim as a dynamic and versatile artist. He has performed with jazz legends like Slide Hampton, Cedar, Walton, and the Jimmy Heath Big Band. His music has graced iconic venues such as Birdland, the Blue Note, and Dizzy's Club Coca-Cola. A gifted composer and arranger, Nick's work has been performed by artists like Stevie Wonder and featured on major networks. His 2017 debut album, Vagabond Soul, Between Light and Shadows, and his upcoming album, New America, are all available on streaming platforms. New America will be coming out in 2025. We're going to talk about that. And Nick is also a dedicated educator teaching at the New School and NJCU. So, Nick, good to see you, my friend.
Great to see you, Abe. Thanks for having me on the show.
My pleasure. So Nick, before we started recording, we started talking about some, it's been a crazy time for you. You've been dealing with something, and I know that in order to deal with what you've been dealing with, there has to be a certain healing that has to take place. Not just a physical healing, but maybe a spiritual or mental healing. And I'm sure music has been a part of that for you. Can you talk a little bit about, what's been going on? Just give the audience a little context of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a challenging year. I don't like to say it was a hard year because I think that gives too much power to the adversity. But it was a challenging year, and I really believe that challenges are presented to us in the order that we are ready to receive them and overcome them, right? But yeah, it was definitely a challenging year in that my excuse me, my health was an issue and it became very much a spiritual, as you mentioned, and a mental struggle as well, because I just kind of changed my perspective on the world a little bit and had to go to gigs and go to work while being in a lot of pain and being uncomfortable. And also, I think the hardest thing was the uncertainty, driving home or taking the subway home after a gig and not knowing when the, the challenge was going to be overcome. And that required digging very deep and getting back in touch with components of my life like faith and prioritizing music more than I ever had before was actually really special because it was like music became this sort of open field with sunlight and blue skies. And whenever I went to play, everything was cool, everything was happy, and it made me realize more than I ever had realized before what a gift music is to all of us to get to listen to it, to talk about it, to play it, to think about it. It's so pure and it's all giving. It was something that never left my side, and that was really special.
You talked about pain, you being able to play gigs in physical pain, and I'm no stranger to that, as I told you before. And I remember just to go to a gig and not be in pain after having dealt with it, it's like that feeling of release. You know what I mean? Has that
Honestly,
been?
man, sorry to interrupt you. I am not even there yet because I'm not in pain anymore, but I still have this like instinct of being ready to flinch. Like it hasn't sunk in yet, that it's over. My hypervigilance is still kind of there.
Well,
So
even
I'm
if you're
looking
even if
forward to
even
it.
if you're physically healed too, the brain, the brain is plastic, so you could be healed, but your brain just thinks you're in pain.
Totally.
That's a whole other healing that people don't even talk about. You kind of have to figure out for
I had
yourself.
no idea, man. I mean, that's the stage I'm at right now. Everything is cool, but because of the I hate to use this word because it's overused today, but because of the traumatic nature of the struggle, it left my mind in a state of feeling like I was in constant danger. And every day gets easier, gets better. But the blessing, the silver lining here is that I've gotten into things like the Four Agreements, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I've gotten deeper into meditation and fitness and like I have to do those things. It's not like someone says, "Hey, check these books out. They're great." I'm like, "No, I have to read these books every day just so I can get my mind in the right place." Because if I don't do that, it starts to slip back, like you said, being so plastic. It starts to go back to the state it was in 6 months ago.
Yeah, you talked about Eckhart Tolle. It's a great book. Have you read any books by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk? He talks a lot about the present moment and stuff. I'm just curious if you explored that yet or not.
No, I mean, I would love to check it out. The Power of Now is kind of my first foray into just, the practice of being super present. And it was actually incredibly life-changing to read that book. I'm on my second read of it
Well, all
right now.
we have is the moment right now, just talking to each other,
Yeah, this is it.
and we have to find enjoyment in it.
That's right.
Um, so yeah, no, but I'm really, happy to hear that you're, taking a challenge and putting a positive spin on it because you can, get sucked into it. We have to learn to relabel those things. Was there a point, you know, yeah, like you said, you're still going through it now. Has performing started to feel a little better in a sense? Or, like when you're going to your gigs now, you have to do this sort of process, get your mind in shape too. So do you have to tell yourself something before you start to play on a gig now, maybe?
That's a great question, man. And I think the answer I'll give is a little bit different than the way you framed the question because I had to become really aware of a deep level of focus when I was going through the illness that I was facing because the treatment of the illness became very painful. But it caused me to get to a level of even more focus and concentration when I was playing. So I actually kind of found a deeper, more meditative way of playing. And I actually try to go back to that place in a weird way. So it's like separating the pain and the stress of the illness, but retaining that ability to be really present. And also the immediacy and the urgency that I felt. Like every day was like a struggle, and I was just trying to keep my mind right and tried not to succumb to really dark thoughts and feeling very isolated because no one really can understand what you're going through when you're going through something like that, as I'm sure you've had that kind of experience, Like I really felt very alone, and I didn't tell a lot of people about it either. And I probably should have in retrospect, but just dealing with all these intense feelings in a weird way, it just indirectly strengthened my relationship with performing.
No, that, I mean, we don't have to, this is, such an important conversation to have because like you're saying, only you know what you were going through, and everyone only knows what it's like to be them. And when you see now in the jazz scene how petty some of the stuff can be between people and all of the malice and shit talking, it's like almost like how can this even be? You know what I mean? Like it
Or
gives you a greater understanding about how surface that stuff is. Because the
it really,
jazz
really
scene, there
is.
is a lot of that stuff going on.
It's unfortunate, man. And now I have to say I see that stuff in a completely different light. Like I don't want to say I look down on it disdainfully or I'm judging people that are behaving in that way, but it just says to me that those folks may not have anything in their life that's currently happening to force them to understand that they're missing the point.
Yeah.
Like it's all about community and respecting each other and connecting with each other and celebrating and not really holding on to these little petty grievances. So yeah, that has hit me, and I feel a little bit more unplugged from that mindset. But that being said, when you do unplug from that mindset, then what happens? You're kind of a little bit distant from the scene in a weird way because so much of the scene does revolve around, unfortunately, gossip and clickiness and all that stuff.
Yeah. No, Nick, going back to, I discovered you're playing on YouTube. This is probably like, I don't know, probably close to like 15 years ago or something when I saw you playing. I mean, it's probably not even on YouTube anymore, but it was like, I think your recital. Uh, you might have been playing, if I'm wrong, you could tell. Were you maybe we're playing like Deluge or something, or could I be, was I
Oh no,
wrong?
I think that sounds right. Yeah,
You see how,
a
yeah,
while ago, man. You got a good memory.
yeah, yeah. So you were a hell of a player, back then. How has your relationship evolved over the years, like in the last, let's say, 5 years? Because even back then, you were always, tremendous.
Oh man, that's really kind of you to say, first of all. And I'm really honored that you checked out my music and that's the impression you had from it. And I love your playing. You're such a great musician as well, man. So coming from you, that's a wonderful compliment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you as well.
Um, I'm always just trying to improve and learn more. But I think that the journey that I've been on over the past 2 or 3 years has been to try to leave the process that we're all taught when we're in music school behind. And for me, that process was sort of follow a formula for the pedagogy and the learning of the music and kind of make my own system, come up with my own way of learning. And in a weird way, it coincided with this studio. I don't know if your viewers are going to be able to see it or if it's an audio only podcast, but
No,
I
it'll
built
be on YouTube too.
Okay, cool. So I built this little, second bedroom into a recording studio in my place. And that kind of unlocked this ability to come to this room, this space, and treat it like my own personal man cave. And I just treated practicing like something really fun. And I just said to myself, what do I think is really cool, that really inspires me, that I can't really do really that well, and I want to check out today. So it was more just like connecting with that childlike joy and wonder and going way back before we're in music school and we're being taught you need to shed this and that, and just going back to like being a little kid on a piano and banging out chords and like discovering, I use air quotes for that, discovering things that sound really cool. So I think my playing has hopefully become more um, a representation of what really inspires me and what excites me in a very pure childlike way. That's definitely the goal. I'm definitely not there yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, when you're in music school, it's like you're in such a vulnerable place because everyone leaves the comfort of their high school and then they are around all these new people, like trying to do the same thing as they are. They have mentors and their school only when that's just like a micro, like that's just one little dot compared to the whole world of jazz, and we can kind of get locked in to what we're going through when we're learning. But did you have anyone that you'll still take their lessons with you to this day when it comes to your approach about music and life and how they intersect?
Well, that's another great question, man. I definitely got a lot from every teacher that I studied with during the course of, undergrad and graduate studies and everything in between. But it's hard to say this, man, without sounding in a way like I'm unappreciative of everything I learned. I just had to kind of let it all go at a certain point because I have these interjects of their voices in my mind and hearing what, Jackie McLean, like one of the greatest legends of the alto saxophone, would say in my brief, I didn't study with him very much, but I had a few lessons with him. And I took group lessons with him for 2 years, or George Garzone or Steve Wilson, Phil Markowitz, all these amazing musicians, Dave Liebman. I learned so much from them. But at a certain point, I just had to let their voices go because I was always going to be pushed in different directions by them. And I think that when you have great teachers, part of the the process of a truly great teacher is to just let their students go and let them be themselves and take what they've learned from that teacher and incorporate it into their own playing. But then, you got to be yourself. and I couldn't quite get out of that, like, I don't know, gestation state until I let the voices of those teachers go in my mind.
When did that happen for you? Because it sounds to me like it was still, even after school, you were still thinking about this stuff.
For too
Like,
long. Yeah, for too long. It's very recently. It's within the
like in the
past.
last, like last couple years.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because the kind of player that has a very active mind when I'm playing, and it can really work against me, where I'm overthinking things, I'm hypercritical, and I hear the voices of what these amazing musicians that I still love and admire and look up to so much would say to me, and I'm hearing their voices like in the moment of playing. But you can't have that because that's going to take you out of the flow. And I had to trust that I put in the work, I studied the various concepts that they showed me, and like Bird says, you practice, and then you forget about it when you're playing. It's a paraphrase, of course, but that's kind of what I had to do and still am working on doing.
No, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I don't think people understand that some of these things can, in even no matter how good you are, these things can take decades to like let go of. And you don't think maybe you think, oh, like I'll be in this situation for, but this can take 10 years, 50, it's because something just happens with this music. I don't know what it is, but you're 100% right.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. I mean, it's really about um, it just goes down back to the fact that we only live once. I mean, I do believe in reincarnation, but let's say just in this existence and in these bodies that we have right now in the moment, we're only here once. So I think it's really paramount that we are as true to ourselves as possible and we can be as individual as possible without skipping the steps and not learning what we need to learn and paying homage to the masters and learning the tradition and the culture.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been talking to some educators as well. Like I was talking to Rick Peckham. I'm not sure if do you know Rick Peckham?
Mhm.
Yeah, taught Kurt Rosenwinkel and
Yeah,
Lage Lund, and it's
I
like
do.
he's like, yeah, I just told them to everyone, I just tell everyone to be themselves. It's like that's it's such a simple lesson, but it's a valuable one.
That's a great lesson though, man. I never had that like so directly said to me by a teacher, and I wish I did.
Yeah, me too.
That
Yeah,
would have helped a lot, but saved me like 5 or 10 years of headaches.
yeah. And when we talk about this music, and you said, we feel like we're in this life, just who we are, for this lifetime, and when you play the music, it's also with you, it's a living, breathing art form, as well. That's part of what's going on in your life. What do you hope people take away from hearing you play, at a concert, a club? Any, a small place, but what do you want people to take away after they hear your music?
Well, when I was younger, I just wanted them to think that I was a really good saxophone player. And then that over time became very, very superficial and aesthetic. And I realized that it wasn't anywhere near what the point was. And lately, I really have been putting a lot of importance on connecting with an audience. Um, I put a lot of myself into my music, especially my compositions. And I know they're abstract, there's no lyrics, so it's hard to convey the exact story of what goes into the writing of them or the performing of them. But I do want some kind of emotional sentiment to be conveyed to the listener, to the audience, so that they can feel something. And even if they're not necessarily jazz fans or, the deepest music listeners, they can still hear the sounds of my music and relate to it on a human level and walk out having experienced something that hits them in a really emotional, spiritual way.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever think about this or not, but like, the emotions that they can take away and just feel connected to is one thing, but just, you know the possibilities in the music, translating to the possibilities of life in general. Like, is that something that comes ever comes into your conscious mind?
Do you mean from the perspective of the performer or the listener?
The listener.
Yeah, I want, if I can so humbly make that a goal to be able to suggest something to a listener and maybe open up a door in their mind to consider something that will then go on to enrich their lives. That would, for me, that's like, without hyperbole, that's one of the greatest gifts that a musician could ever hope to receive, right? If you can take everything that you've fostered and nurtured and developed over your entire life, and that somehow can positively affect someone's life in such a profound way, like what better accomplishment can you ever hope to achieve as a musician or
Yeah,
an
that's it's
artist?
a victory for humankind.
Yeah.
When you obviously, even though you talked about like these musicians stirred you in the right direction, yet the wrong direction because of, taking things maybe too literally in a sense, but you still had to have the moment when you decided at an early age, I'm going to go to music college because there's something is it about this. Was it a light switch that went off for you when you heard a certain record or went to a certain concert? Like, because you have to consciously make that decision, as a youngster.
I was lucky that my dad was a professional musician, and he just exposed me to a ton of great music since I was born. I mean, before I was born, my mom said that she would go to symphony orchestra concerts and I would kick when the music would start. So I guess I've always had a love affair with music. And there was never a light switch moment. I can't remember any time in my life that I didn't love music and know I wanted to be a musician. It was
It
just
was
like
just part of your, this was just part of your life in the same way,
it,
like, yeah, okay.
there's never a second that I wasn't obsessed and completely in love with music.
What was it about the saxophone though, because
Yeah, I heard Now's the Time, of course, by the great Charlie Parker when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. And before that, I had been studying piano and kind of, derping around with some, very simple, just rudimentary piano method type of stuff. But I really enjoyed playing the piano. But as soon as I heard that record, something clicked. And then, believe it or not, later on, not too long after that, I heard David Sanborn. I heard a record of David Sanborn's. Maybe I was about 9 or 10 years old. And it wasn't just the saxophone, it was the alto saxophone. Something about the sound of the alto saxophone spoke to me, and I just related to it. It just
did you
sounded like
did you ever see the movie
poetry.
Forget Paris by any chance?
I don't know that one.
Yeah, he's in it. He plays the national anthem, and it's
Really?
yeah, at the end of the movie. It's like the font, like it's really cool.
What is it called?
Forget Paris. It's from the
That is,
90s. It's with Billy Crystal. It's awesome movie. It's a romantic comedy. It's really funny, but he's in it at the end. That's
let me check that out.
yeah, because you met and David Sanborn. Rest his soul. He's
That dude.
so he was him and Charlie Parker.
It was the sound, it was like when did you first, get seduced by the sound of the guitar?
Yeah, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
That's awesome, dude.
I'm not lying to you.
I believe you. Because that's how this stuff works, man. It I don't want to say it worms its way in because that sounds very insidious, but it sort of like it like seeps into our hearts from just like, walking through our everyday childhood lives. And that's a beautiful example, man, because yeah, there's like kind of that metally like rock guitar sound in that, but it's like that stereotypical 80s guitar sound, which is an awesome sound.
Oh yeah, I was like, yeah, these are the coolest human beings on earth.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Um, so when you're playing the alto saxophone, obviously you're kind of going back to drawing from, other people too, like, Cannonball Adderley, and then, you got to study with the great Jackie McLean. Um, I'm sure that, there's certain recordings of certain alto players that you're still like listening to this day. Like, are there any of those recordings that still like play a role as much as they did when, back then as they do now?
So there's definitely a lot of recordings that are so formative, and I don't listen to them anymore. And here's the reason why. Man, I don't want your listeners to get the wrong idea about me. It's it's it, when I listen to these records, they're so powerful to me and so magnetic, and I have such humility and absolute reverence for these musicians that recorded these records that it will so greatly influence my playing, um, that I have to just kind of like detox from them sometimes.
Yeah, I
It,
get it. Well, I see you have the Unity record behind you. Is that a Grant Green record next to it?
that's idle moments. Yeah,
Yeah, it was just a little blur from here, but I could
yeah, yeah,
it's like
yeah.
in the background. That's awesome.
I'm on a Joe Hen kick these days.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you bought the new record too, right? The with McCoy Tyner.
Yeah, forces of nature.
Joe Henderson, man, like so unpredictable.
Yeah, so free.
No cliche, you know what I mean? Like
Just so free, man.
could do everything.
Could do anything at any time and make it swing.
Hmm.
Feel good, right?
Yeah, my guitar teacher at Berkeley, who was like kind of my mentor, he used to play with him, and that's where I first learned about Joe Henderson.
That's heavy.
Man, just it's like its own thing.
Yeah, it's its own thing. Did he ever tell you any stories about playing with him?
Well, believe it or not, I don't. He didn't want to talk about it.
I believe it.
He just did. He would. He refused to. He's like, oh, I did a recording session with. He's on one of his records called Multiple.
Oh,
Um,
he's on multiple.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
He didn't play any guitar on it, but he just did like some like chants on this song, like "Song for Sinners," I think it's called.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah, but he would not talk about any of like he wouldn't talk about Joe Henderson, Charles Earland, none of that stuff, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't I mean, it's you have to like kind of do your own deep dive, but you
Yeah.
want to know about Joe Henderson
I
because he
mean,
just
I'm trying to devour anything I can about Johan. Like, I want to know what he ate for breakfast. I want to know, what color socks he wore. Like, I
well, I
want to know
did
everything
hear
about him.
I heard he used to like not sleep before recording sessions. I don't know if that's
Really?
a myth or not. Have you heard that?
I never heard that. No.
Like he just wanted to be like in like that state of being asleep and awake. So, but
Okay.
this could, I mean, it could all be hearsay. I'm not sure.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I do know that he was very experimental with the usage of mind-altering drugs to see how it would affect his playing from a very studious standpoint, it seems, and was big on writing etudes and just a complete master of the scholarly approach to music. It just, I don't know, that guy is just he's on his own level because everything he plays is so relatable to the history of the music, and you can hear the language in there and the lineage, but it's so turned on its head and so individual. It blows my mind.
Yeah, like one phrase going to the next that can be so different, but the way they effortlessly flow into each other, it's just, and they're so lyrical.
Mhm.
Like I don't, who plays like that, you
I
know?
tried. It didn't work.
What?
I said I tried. It didn't work. It sounded dumb. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, no, that's so great to hear that you're on the like the Joe Henderson rabbit hole now, you know?
It's really like not from a transcription standpoint, but it's just getting the energy of the way he played and how free he was. It I find a lot of cats who are free lose the if there's four elements to each musician. You can say arbitrarily earth, fire, air, water, like Berganti talks about. He is very free, so he's got a lot of that air, and he can kind of go with the flow. He's very adaptable. He's got the water, and of course, he has the fire, the passion, and the emotion. But he has so much earth. Everything swings. His feel is so impeccable. His his place in the music and how he locks in. with the band and the very fundamental understanding of the language and the harmony is it's unparalleled.
Do you know the album In Pursuit of Blackness?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, the one he has that plays this track. It's called Vis a Vis. Do you know that? It's like
Hmm. Yeah.
totally just free with Dave Holland and like just like I'm like, how does someone play this free and like it's just so swinging? Like, you know what I mean? Like it just
Oh, I
it
totally know
doesn't
what you
make
mean.
sense to me.
And it just sounds like he just rolled out of bed and it's so casual in the sense that there's an ease and a mastery to everything. Like he's just kind of like yawning out these lines that are just there's no trying. He's not white knuckling it. He's not at the edge of his abilities. He's just like letting these ideas unfurl so naturally, like sitting back in like a rocking chair and just spinning these tales.
Yeah, I think mentally something has to take. I mean, obviously you have to like, but some other mental process has to like where it's just like the way I'm speaking right now to you is just the exact. It's there's no difference.
That's what I'm talking about. I want to know how he was able to achieve that state. Obviously, tons of shedding and living the music, but there's got to be something deeper. He was on something. He was onto something much deeper. And
Yeah.
and I think at a certain point when you're talking about recordings of alto saxophone players that were really important to me, I just wanted to get away from the listening to those records like I listened to them when I was younger and I was in college and I wanted to learn about them and understand them and study them. And now I'm going to listen to a record because I want to get the big picture and maybe what that person might have been thinking or feeling, how he's interacting with the band as a whole. And I'm less concerned with the notes and the specific details that we would study in music school.
Yeah, the notes are secondary.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, I mean, we're about out of time. I could sit and talk with you all day. We're gonna have to do this again,
Love to, man. Thanks so
for
much for
part
having me.
two. Where can everyone find your social media and stuff?
So my Instagram is my most active social media, and it's at Nick Biello Music.
At Nick Bill and website is the same one, just your
Yep.
beautiful.